SARS-CoV-2 is now finding its way into a lot of other countries. The human toll is really beginning to rise. And the United States is about to embark on probably the most dangerous monetary experiment in all of history. Hello, everyone. This is Chris Martinson here with your SARS-CoV-2, a.k.a. the honey badger virus, a.k.a. HB19. It's March 22nd, Sunday, 2020. This is day 59 of my reporting here. And I'm titling this one, Here Comes the Panic. Not from you and me, not from the people who got prepared, but from officials. They really seem to have gotten way behind the curve on this one. So let's jump into the numbers here. And they're really just absolutely stunning and depressing in many, many ways. And, of course, as you know, I don't believe these, not even for a second. Got lots of additional anecdotal data sneaking out of China, what little there is, but there is some coming out every now and then. But I'm sure the people who do that take great risks because China has made it an official policy of the CCP not to allow any data to get out about this. It's embarrassing for them or something. Who knows what. But Italy, we have data coming out of plus 5,000 cases and 5,476 deaths, 651 in a single day, was still less than 1,000 cases per 1 million population. I made a mistake in the one I put out on today's Sunday, so that would have been Friday. I'd miscalculated it. So at any rate, this is easy math to do. Once they get to 1,000 cases per million, that will be 0.1% of their population will have been exposed. So these are total cases. This is not serious, critical, anything like that. It's total cases. And so we know that we don't get herd immunity until we get that up to around 80%. So a long, long way to go in this story yet. United States now making it to third place on the list. Of course, this is what happens when you finally start testing. You start finding cases. So I guess don't test, don't tell is over now. But we still don't have nearly enough test kits to do this. Watching South Korea, they have these walk-in telephone booth things where there's a doctor on the other side. You pick up the phone, they talk to you, you can get tested right on the spot. Like 7 minutes later, you have a readout. Just amazing. Not there yet in the United States. Not even close. So this is going to really begin to explode, obviously. The serious critical deaths, everything. Spain is in real trouble here. As I reported on Friday, Spain's leadership made some very bad decisions, including allowing very, very large festivals to run and gatherings and all of that, even knowing that they had COVID-19 or HB19 in their country. So that was really a very bad decision on their part. Germany, I don't get this. This still doesn't make a lick of sense to me. Here they are piling up cases like crazy, but nobody's serious, nobody's critical. I can't find any answer for this. I'm working at it. I'm just not as good a researcher as I used to be or something. I can't figure out what's happening here. So I'm going to keep looking. Iran, they're reporting it's a pretty big downtick in cases. I'm not sure this is right at all. Of course, this is clearly bogus here with a blank. So I don't know what truth is here right now for Iran at all. France also coming on very strong, starting to take this seriously now. And South Korea, even with their gold standard, are still trucking along, finding cases. They're still spreading a little bit. And the question becomes, how long can these really heroic efforts that South Korea are undertaking, can they keep them up? Can they continue to have their test and contain, trace and contain policy? How long can you do that, before, I guess, your teams wear out or your economy can't bear it anymore? I'm just wondering about that because here, this is a very, very tiny fraction of their total population has been exposed to this thing at this point in time. So it'll be interesting to see how they can do that. But notice here that the difference between Spain at 612 here per million, Italy at 978, and South Korea, they all had the same information at the same time. South Korea decided to go with really aggressive policies of testing and containment. Switzerland, normally noted for its precision and people following the rules and being really good at these sorts of things, you might imagine, it turns out not to be so good at it. That's a little bit of surprise to me because I thought they would have been a little bit more up the curve, but nope. And here they are with 864 cases per million population, putting them actually number 2 on this list if you ordered it with Italy at number 1. And we don't know where China actually stands on this list. Probably not that high, though. And the UK coming on strong here, of course, because they had a pretty disastrous sort of a don't test, don't tell, and early sort of a run of several critical weeks lost, sort of dancing around the whole let it burn, sort of an approach, just get the herd immunity quickly. I don't think they'd really did their virology course as well. Netherlands, very strong movement here. A lot of new deaths, a lot of new cases coming in. And we see here Belgium, Austria, Norway, Sweden, all with lots of new cases coming up here. So Canada now on the board here with a plus 98, and Canada was also pretty slow to the bat on getting in front of this for a while there. But honestly, people, the only way to be in front of this thing is you've got to be really, really aggressive. This honey badger virus is an escape artist. It's really tricky. It's very determined, and you have to just be at it all the time. All right. Cases are still exponential. So here's the latest update. You see I put a very thin line so you can see is that last ball, is it nudging off below that line, and would it be down here? It'll be down below that line, or at least tipping down. And I can't detect any tipping there yet. So this is on a log chart here. So if it's flat line, that means its cases are still growing exponentially. All right. I've seen a lot of people come out. There's still surprisingly the crowd out there that it's the flu, bro. And I understand some people are having really slow adjustment reactions and don't want to believe this. And there's still some disbelievers out there, and there are people trying to minimize this. And yes, I will get to that Medium article written by a Mr. Jin that was really just it was a disservice. That's what I'll call it. And at any rate, for those people who are busy saying this is not a big deal or we're making too much of it and all of that, we got to put some human face on this right now. So this is a Spanish doctor. I don't speak any Spanish whatsoever, but it's very clear what's coming out of this in what he's saying here. Because it says here, I live in Spain, just received this video via WhatsApp with a crying doctor explaining that they are taking away respiratory machines from 65-year-olds or older to give to younger people. The older people get sedatives to die less painfully. So let's listen in.
Solo tiene una palabra. Genocidio. Genocidio. Y tendrán que responder por ello cuando llegue el momento. Pues bueno, por favor, de verdad, se lo pido a todo el mundo. Compartir este vídeo de una puta vez. No podemos dejar morir a la gente que ha levantado este país. Seguro que muchos de vosotros tenéis padres mayores de 65 años y no sería una pena que murieran sin que estéis a su lado, sedados y asfixiados porque no han tenido un respirador. Manda cojones. Viva España y por favor compartir esto, que ya no puedo seguir porque no puedo contener más mis lágrimas.
Yeah, that really hit me. And I've found a lot of other cases of people, young people, younger people, people well under the age of 65 saying, you really don't want to get this. And it's a really, really nasty virus. It is not mild for 80% of the people. It doesn't have this huge cohort of people who are just asymptomatic, and it's not a big deal. It's only a big deal for a couple of people. It's a really awful, awful thing. And it's happening. And it's happening now. So the sooner we can adjust to that reality, the better. And I found this particular example of something like this to bring the human element of this back in. Because for all those people who want to run their numbers and say, oh, you have a better chance of dying in a car accident, it's not that they're bad people. It's not that they have maybe even an inability to get this intellectually or anything like that. It's just they're not emotionally ready yet to manage this. So they're the slow adjusters. That's fine. But we need to just set them aside so we can move at the pace we need to. I want to focus in a little bit on Australia and Brazil because I've been asked to a couple of times by people. And so let's talk here about Australia, checking in with 281 new cases. That's a really big increase in case count because it was only at 1,100 or just under 1,100 yesterday. And so they're too early in this run right now to have too many serious critical cases because it takes a little while. I think it's looks like it takes about a month from when the cases start appearing till you start really seeing this explosion out here. It's got a really long, slow burn. And so it takes time for that to develop. So Australia is really coming up, and Brazil with 1,200 cases here, but they also have a vast underreporting of actual cases because of some pretty strict criteria about how people get tested or who's included in this particular case count. But the concern, of course, is what's going to happen to Brazil when COVID-19, HB19 gets into their favelas. All right, let's look at Australia real quick. Here's total cases in Australia. I think we know where we are on this curve right now. So we had the case, cluster, and here we are. Boom, right? So Australia is just about to head forward with this. And I found this. This is Mark Pesce, however that's pronounced, at MPESCE. And he wrote here, okay, folks, I want you all to take a deep breath, settle yourselves, and listen carefully. I've been collecting daily data on HB19 infections in Australia since the 8th of March. If you want to see my data, please follow this link so you can get to his place here. Again, every link is going to be put below this particular recording so you can find it easier. Just click and go. All right. I've now been collecting data for a fortnight. In that period of time, just 14 days, we've increased 1,600%. 16 times. 4 doublings. That means the cases are doubling in Australia every 3.5 days. That right there must be a very, very sobering fact. It means, if nothing changes, that in a fortnight from now, on the evening of the 5th of April, there will be more than 20,000 infections in Australia. That will give us an infection rate double that which Spain has today. And that is legitimate scary. All right. So here's who Mark Pesce is here, and or however that's pronounced. I hope I'm not mangling that, Mark. But this is just the math, right? And this is really important, and this is exponential math. And so for the people who can run the math, it's very scary. And of course, that means they're just a couple of weeks behind Spain, and this is what's happening in Spain already, and it's not pretty. And total coronavirus cases in Brazil, again, case, cluster, and we're just off to the boom stage at this point. I think this should actually probably be steeper if Brazil had better testing and all of that. So that's, we're going to see the same sort of explosion of things coming out in Brazil as we go forward in time. Looking here now, Brazil, Chile, Ecuador, Peru, Mexico, Panama, Colombia, Argentina. So some of these are fairly warm weather countries. So again, this is starting to put a little bit of the punch into the idea that there is not going to be a summer lull. We certainly hope there can be, but look at this. Costa Rica, Uruguay, right? Honduras, Bolivia, Venezuela. These are warm countries. Paraguay, right? So at any rate, this is the list. I don't know why it took longer for it to get down there, but I did read I believe it was in the Hammer and Dance article, which we're going to get to in just a minute here. I think the author of that made a really nice observation, which was how come the rich countries seem to have more explosive cases? And maybe it's because the rich countries can afford to test more aggressively and all of that. So this could just be a testing problem, catching up with things. At any rate, let's look here now. This is craziness in Guanabara, Brazil, as realization of the coronavirus epidemic sets in with the locals. You can just feel the panic in here, right? Look at that face mask attempt. But you can just feel that as people are racing and pushing and putting plastic bags over their head. This is just sort of what we expect to see now when things start to get a little bit more dicey and the realization finally sets in. And of course, the realization didn't have to take this long to set in. People had access to all this data a long time ago, of course. Let's look at now, this is in the UK. This is social distancing. This is the You're Doing It Wrong edition here. Not a single mask to be seen. No spacing whatsoever. Everybody's concerned about the virus, but not concerned enough to spread themselves out or concerned enough to get a face mask, not even a bandana. This woman's not even bothering to put her scarf over her face. All of these things could help, of course. And here's a lockdown, UK style. So this is the lockdown after a lockdown had been reported. Again, I think that's, holding a nice farmer's market here. We got some nice booths with some stuff for sale, passing money back and forth, I assume, people walking around. Not a mask to be seen, again, anywhere in this particular story. And, we're slowly getting there with authorities finally beginning to look at and understand things the way that we looked at them. And so look at this one here. We got Germany bans gatherings of more than 2. So they're almost there, because to me, a well-managed gathering is 1, right? More than 2. But anyway, we're getting there. So we saw Switzerland first say, we're going to ban gatherings over 1,000 as if, 999 is safe or something like that, right? And then it went down to 500, and then the CDC in the U.S. went to 50, and then they went to 25, and now it's 10. They're getting there, but why not just come out with it all at once right at the beginning of all of this, right? So the way you avoid this is you just don't be around other people, but you certainly don't want to be involved in this sort of a shopping scrum right here. You certainly don't want to be just stuck in a big long line right next to people. You certainly don't want to be just walking by people who might be coughing in an open air. You don't want to be rushing into a store with everybody else putting plastic bags over your head. None of that. All right. Let's see here. So the Slow Adjusters edition, I got a lot of people sent this to me, asked what I thought, and this was Aaron Jin here. And it was titled "Evidence Over Hysteria." I mean, you can feel the bias in that right away. Evidence over hysteria, as if there's hysterical people and then there's logical people, like Aaron, who by the way is a data analyst for big data or something out of Silicon Valley. But this was the opening paragraph right here. And, he's trying to take it apart. After watching the outbreak of COVID-19 for the past 2 months, I followed the pace of the infection, its severity, and how our world is tackling the virus. So if he's been watching this for 2 months, he should be pretty far up the curve, because 2 months, that's about how long I've been tracking it, right? While we should be concerned and diligent, the situation is dramatically elevated to a mob-like fear spreading faster than COVID-19 itself. When 13% of Americans believe they are currently infected with COVID-19, mathematically impossible, full-on panic is blocking our ability to think clearly and determine how to deploy our resources to stop this virus. I won't disagree that that panic is not helpful to good thinking, but just look at this. Look at this right here. Let's just pick this one piece apart. It's mathematically impossible. Well, no. The first case in the United States was back in January, and I calculated it. What would it be required for 13% of Americans to have mathematically possibly been infected? It would have required this thing to have an R0 of 5.8. It might have an R0 as high as 7. So it's certainly within the realm of possibility. So it's not mathematically impossible. We might say it's logically improbable. We could even say maybe mathematically improbable, but it's not impossible. So when you see language like that declarative statement, when it's just not grounded in facts, and it's right there in the first paragraph, well, it just got worse from there. And I called it a freakishly ignorant piece, because it really is. And it was taken apart by an infectious disease specialist, saving me a lot of time and effort. So thank you, C.T. Bergstrom. Thank you for doing that. And this person really brings the infectious disease specialist guns to the table. So that's awesome. And so he took this whole thing apart. So if you want to see that, I've linked to it, or just go to CT Bergstrom here, and learn all those points if you want to. All right. So, this though, by Thomas Pueyo, he's been doing some of the best writing on this. And by the way, great writer, very logical, really clear, good examples. You want to check this out at medium.com. He calls this the hammer and dance, which is a strategy for how we probably should be managing this thing. And the first thing you got to do is you got to do the hammer, which is just crush this virus down. That's what Wuhan did. You just put everybody inside. You're going to have to enforce this, because not all populations totally get what social distancing means. And in the absence of people being at all reasonably clever, and by the way, this was my experience yesterday. On Saturday, I went to a local Home Depot because there were some last minute things I needed to get. I didn't really want to go out in public at this late date, but I did. And so I get in there with my fiance Evie and I, and we're the only 2 people wearing masks in the whole store. There's, in fact, we were the greeter at this particular Home Depot was a very elderly gentleman in obviously disabled in a electric wheelchair of some kind, greeting us, and clearly had comorbidities and not just nothing there going on for masks or anything like that. So here in Western Massachusetts, we look just the same as this. So it's going to take time if you want to do the hammer. If you really want to knock this disease down, you're going to have to enforce it. You're going to have to bring out military vehicles. You're going to have to really explain to people what they've got to do. And unfortunately, the hammer is going to be complicated by the fact that we've had so many public officials talking about how this is no worse than the flu, and we had the media repeating that. All of that's going to have to be undone, and it's going to be very expensive in terms of capital. So we'll call that social capital, political capital, trust capital, whatever form of capital you want to think about got burned here because the wrong message was given out. So now, yes, it is serious, and we're going to do the hammer. And then the dance is about how you allow this thing to go through and move through your society without it overwhelming your hospital system. I highly encourage you to read this entire article. It's really just super well done. Here's just one example pulled from that. He's talking here about the boom stage. So I think this is coming to a country near you, and I'm pulling this one piece out of a really tremendous article simply because I didn't want to read every word of it. But second of all, I think this captures something that's really important. He writes here, Thomas writes, on Thursday, 3/12, on Thursday, the president of Spain dismissed suggestions that the Spanish authorities had been underestimating the health threat. Yeah, no. Have they been underestimating? No, I think they got it about right. And then on Friday, well, they declared a state of emergency. And on Saturday, it's just Thursday, Friday, Saturday, boom. People can't leave home except for key reasons: groceries, work, pharmacy, hospital, bank, or insurance company with extreme justification. Specific ban on taking your kids out for a walk or seeing friends or family, right? All bars and restaurants closed, only take-home acceptable. All entertainment closed. Sports, movies, museums, municipal celebrations, weddings can't have guests. Funerals can't have more than a handful of people is. Mass transit remains open. That'll get shut soon. And then on Monday, land borders were shut. So look at that. We went from Thursday, everything's fine, everything's good, to boom, right? This is how this thing folds. This is as Albert Bartlett said, the greatest shortcoming of the human race is our inability to understand the exponential function. That's why you need people in positions of power who actually get it and who can talk about it and understand it. Because if you don't understand it, you're going to be somewhere between do nothing and mitigation, which is just a disaster of millions and millions of unnecessary deaths. In the calculations in this, if you don't get this hammer and dance right, 10 million deaths in the U.S., something like that. Just a really big number, Spanish flu style numbers. All right. As if that was the only threat we're going to face here in the United States, elsewhere, we're going to be facing a lot of economic hardship. And of course, you remember when I talk about the balancing act between not overwhelming your hospital system, wanting to get that R0 down to a less than 1 transmissive rate, and not killing your economy at the same time. So you got to have an economy, got to get the R0 below 1, and you don't want to overwhelm your hospital system. So you got to let the R0 burn up enough so that you can get herd immunity eventually. That's the balancing act. Going to be very tricky to do. And in my country, the United States, I think what's going to happen is we're going to do a lot of inappropriate and wrong things first, because that's kind of our way. So I'm calling this fire up the helicopters, because I think we've got just the possibility of having a really punishing inflation show up in, call it 6 months to a year. I'm giving you some forewarning on this. That's my job as a person who's got time to peer into the future like this. At any rate, let's go through some of this. This stuff is actually curling my toes a bit. So starting off here, Matt Stoller did a great job collecting all of these right here. So that's at Matthew Stoller. You can find him on Twitter, and he's also got a nice blog written up about all of this stuff too, which I think if you want to, I'd encourage you to read. It's good. So okay, out of 500 billion of the Mnuchin money slush fund, 450 billion is exempt from any disclosure requirements. What? What do you mean exempt from disclosure requirements? 450 billion. What? Okay, so this is a good time to know Mnuchin and to be connected to him in some way, because guess what? There's a $450 billion pile of money for grab. He continues here, this GOP offer is an ugly grab bag of stuff that McConnell wants, $500 billion bailout fund at the discretion of Mnuchin with no real limits, plus turns the FDIC into a slush fund for bailouts. Remember, the FDIC only has 1.4% of total insured deposits in its insurance fund. It's not a slush fund. It's got maybe, I don't know, 104 billion in there or something like that. It doesn't have a lot of money in there. It has 1.4% of total money. And a fake limit on golden parachutes to twice anything paid out in 2019. Golden parachutes. So all those CEOs are like, I want to spend more time with my family. So yeah, this is going to be really tough. You can only, we're going to limit your golden parachutes to twice whatever it was you paid out in 2019. Just awful stuff here. Like I said, we're going to try a lot of bad stuff before we try anything good. All right, here's a list of what's been floated either publicly or privately for the coronavirus coup. I'm told that Pelosi will take whatever McConnell negotiates in the Senate on the corporate side. $50 billion for airlines, $150 billion for anyone Mnuchin wants, likely Boeing. 3. Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, two of the richest men in the entire world, well, they want $5 billion in grants or loans to keep commercial space company employees on the job and launch facilities open. And they also want the IRS to give them cash for R&D tax credits. There you go. That's just that feels real good. A couple of the richest people wanting billions of dollars from the government, from me, the taxpayer, ultimately from you, the taxpayer, if you're a United States citizen listening to this, so they can keep their commercial space company rolling along. Okay. I don't agree with that, not even for a quarter of a second, but how about dipping into your own money first, just a little of it, and showing that, we're all in this together? No? Okay. The hotel industry wants $150 billion. The restaurant industry wants $145 billion. The National Association of Manufacturers wants $1.4 trillion. The International Council of Shopping Centers wants a guarantee of up to $1 trillion. Adidas is seeking support for a long-sought provision allowing people to use pre-tax money to pay for gym memberships and fitness equipment. I mean, look at this lobbying going on here. Unbelievable. Importers are rushing to get rid of duties paid by those found guilty of dumping. Beer industry wants $5 billion. Candy industry wants $500 million. On and on and on. There's going to be more. Here's the punchline. One GOP lobbyist said, anytime there's a crisis and Washington is in the middle of it, it's an opportunity for guys like me. That's what this is. This is just another corporate boondoggle slushy giveaway. In the midst of a crisis, all these individual companies can think about is how they are going to personally secure more money for themselves through golden parachutes and having their employees paid for and stuff like that. Remember, I told you, here comes the panic, but it's from officials. And I think the lobbyists have rightly concluded this is a great time to dip into some panicked Congress people and senators and see what you can get out of them. As well, not to be outdone, but on the Democrat side, there's different proposals. And one is direct payments via preloaded cash cards to everyone, $2,000 each, recharging with $1,000 a month until a year after the economy recovers. Ding, ding. Okay, so this is, so everyone, that's 320 million people, times $2,000 each, that's $640 billion. Then $320 billion a month, as $4.48 trillion, just for a 1-year cost. And if you continue this for a year after the economy is done, it just another $3 trillion on top of that. Just amazing. So trillions and trillions on the corporate side, but let's be bipartisan about it. So trillions and trillions on the citizen side. They'll probably strike some deal like that. So at any rate, this is going to create just an explosion of inflation at some point in time. And that's pretty easy to predict at this point. I don't know, maybe is this a better plan? It feels better to me. So the UK government is going to pay 80% of wages for those not working in coronavirus crisis. The government is to pay the wages of millions of workers across Britain to keep them in jobs as the economic fallout from the coronavirus outbreak escalates. So here's why I think it's a better plan. It says here that the state is going to pay grants covering up to 80% of the salaries of workers if companies keep them on their payroll rather than lay them off as the economy crashes. So it's an 80% payout if, and that's up to a maximum of £2,500 per month. So I guess, a lot of employees would be earning more than that. because that's just above the median income. So basically, for half the people involved in this, that would be something of a pay cut. But still, notice the incentive alignment here. It's going to cover salaries if the companies keep them on their payroll. Okay. So let's move over to Thailand real quick here. Remember, I showed you a while back, we looked at a bunch of charts that said maybe Thailand was mischaracterizing, or not recharacterizing, persons under investigations, PUIs, for respiratory viruses of some kind like that. At any rate, now it's kicking in. So we have here a case of kickboxing match in Bangkok leads to a spike in infections. They have 188 new coronavirus cases, a total of nearly 600. There's panic buying going on now. So they've got their own boom moment. And at golf_G here sent me this just a few minutes ago. Thailand at the boom stage. I'm going to call that bloom stage. Social distance is not working here. People are fleeing from Bangkok. Totally disaster. The only thing not disastrous that I see here is mask. So yeah, a lot of masks. So the Asian populations just get it. I swear to God, I could go around here. We have cases here. And we don't know how many there are because we're not testing. And in my local population, most people are not wearing masks. All right, Rich, are you powerful? HB 19, don't care. Senator Rand Paul has just announced a few minutes ago, has tested positive for COVID-19. He's feeling fine. He's in quarantine. He's asymptomatic, was tested out of an abundance of caution due to his extensive travel and events. He was not aware of any direct contact with any infected person. Of course, you don't need to have any awareness of that. HB 19, don't care. All right. Conclusions for today. Hammer and dance. That's the best, most cogent plan I've read so far. Anything less than that is going to result in millions more dead than if it's implemented. And by the way, I love what he did in Hammer and Dance was also include some sort of estimates around the idea of the collateral damage that would happen. So, with a swamped hospital system, if somebody's coming in with a heart attack, they're not getting the care they would need. They might otherwise die because this hospital system is swamped. That's a collateral damage piece. And as well, he puts up a lot of charts talking about how things might go, also saying that he's just making them up because we don't have the data yet. But really, really honest and earnest effort to sort of create a cogent plan. I like it. The warm summer countries are now exploding with cases, so maybe not so much on a summer reprieve. Yeah, that's a little disappointing there. The chance of a truly massive round of inflation is now very high. It's nearly an alert high, and for me, an alert is something that causes me to take very specific action on my own, and I will send that out to my subscribers if or when I feel the need to send out that alert. I'm going to have to watch and see how much of this boondoggly lobbyist wet dream stuff comes to pass and how much of this stuff happens. But it's going to be big. Trust me, we're going to get trillions of dollars printed, and it's going to go to people who are going to consume things, but we're also going to have a lot of people not at work creating things. So what happens when you have a lot of extra money and not a corresponding increase in goods or services? It's called inflation. So that's a pretty easy sort of a prediction to make here. Your life, it's changed forever. What was is just not coming back. What we had even just 6 months ago, it's a whole new world out there. It's got brand new opportunities. It's got a whole lot of new crises. We've got a really tough period we've got to get through. There's going to be a lot of disruptions that are going to continue longer than anybody wants to have them continue. And that's just the nature of this right now. You're on your own, at least in my country. You're pretty much on your own at this point in time. But based on 0 other people wearing a mask out on my time around town yesterday, a lot of people are not only on their own, but not taking care of themselves in any way, shape, or form. And a little disappointing because for those of us who understand practicing social distancing, being responsible, making sure that we're practicing good hygiene, wearing a mask, the people who aren't doing that are going to be the ones that are going to swamp the hospital system and ultimately make it less safe for us. It's really a mark of your ability to be a good citizen, to take care of yourself and be responsible for yourself, because being responsible for yourself is being responsible for others. And remember, it didn't have to be this way. We could have taken a very different route on this. I'll go further and say it should have been different. We could have done this differently. We didn't. So here we are, and we'll make the best of it. It's going to bring out the best in many of us, and that's where we're at. So with that, thank you for listening. We'll be back in touch with you tomorrow. Goodbye.
Hi folks, Adam Taggart here. Chris Martinson and I are the co-founders of Peak Prosperity. If you want to get alerted whenever we release a new video from Chris, just click the red subscribe button right beneath the YouTube video player. Once you've done that, a little bell icon will appear right next to it. Click on that bell. It looks like this. And that's it. The next time we publish a video from Chris, you'll immediately receive a notification from YouTube. Thanks for watching our videos.